Good morning, church. It's so good to be back with you this morning, especially this month, this missions month at Amarillo, which I've heard so much about over the years. And it's wonderful to be here when we're talking about this theme of my story, of God's story. And I've been able to dialogue quite a bit with Kevin over the last few weeks as we talked about this theme, and I see what this room looks like now and all the work that has gone into this month. And if you haven't noticed, some of the typewriter keys around the book ends up on I guess these things that are holding the roof up, So this is our story. This is God's story. And we're going to be talking throughout this month about what's involved in that story, what's at the heart of God's story, and even more than that, how are we involved in it? One of the themes that we're going to come back to again and again is that the ending of God's story has been written. But we continue to be a part of that story every single day. The chapters, the in-between chapters are still being written. And so those stories that we read about in Scripture of Adam and Noah and Deborah and Mary and Paul, the story continued when they died. The story continues today, and we are writing the story of God even now. And so as we get into this idea of God's story, I want to begin with this very, very fundamental question. Why are we here? And I don't mean why are we here in this room. We're here in this room, many of us, is because we've been enduring a pandemic now for about a year and a half, and we'll do anything to get out of a room, of our homes. Now, why are we here on planet Earth? Why do we exist? Have you ever thought about that fundamental question of life? I remember considering that years and years ago, back when I was a high school student. I was in an English class, and for some reason we were reading world literature that year, and the teacher was having us consider those big questions of life. What is the meaning of life, and why are we here? These are questions that people have pondered since the beginning of time. And the number of answers given to these questions there's numerous as the stars in the sky. Many of the answers given in our own time come from people that understand the way the universe works better than probably most of us in this room, from scientists. And they tell us that the earth was created and the world was created by chance. At some point in the past, everything just happened. It happened in an instant, in a bang, in a moment. And things were hurled into their place as they are now. And in fact, we're continuing to move at a rapid speed, further and further and further away from each other. But at the heart of that story is the idea that we were created by chance. All of this just happened. I have a friend who one time gave me an analogy that at the very least challenges that idea that we are here by chance. And he asked me to consider this scenario. He said, imagine that you're a college student and you're living with a roommate, and you come home to your apartment one day and you find your roommate is gone. But on the coffee table there in the apartment is the game Scrabble, and it's spilled off into the floor. Do you remember the game Scrabble? Some of you may have no idea what Scrabble is, so let me give you a little heads up here. It has these little game pieces, little wooden squares. And on one side of the square is blank. And on the other side of the square, there are letters. And you use that to spell out words in the game. He said, so imagine you come home, college student, empty apartment, roommate is gone. Coffee table, Scrabble boards on the table. It is spilled off into the ground, and all 100 pieces are face up. So you can see the letters. He says, is there a greater chance that they just fell out of the box that way, or before your roommate left, he or she happened to arrange the squares to be face up? Or better yet, suppose you come home, empty apartment, Scrabble board is there on the table, pieces are spilled off into the floor, they're all faced up, and they spell out this message: I borrowed your blue sweater, thanks. Is there a greater chance that they just fell out of the box that way? Or that before your roommate left, he arranged them in this order to give you a specific message? I don't fully understand how the world works. I don't fully understand how all of it began and how it continues to move in the universe. But I believe that none of this is by chance. I believe there's a purpose for things in this world. And as evidence of that, I just look to the fact that there's so much precision in the world. Have you noticed this? There's so much precision. We're the perfect distance from the sun. If we were any closer to the sun, we would burn up. If we were any farther away from the sun, we would freeze to death. I know there are medical doctors in this room, most likely, that could tell us about the ways in which the multiple systems in our body work together to sustain life. The heart and the lungs, it works just right. It's created that way. I think of the sun and the rain, how they work perfectly together to provide food for us and beauty for us. I think of all of these things in the world that are around us. And that is another way to say this, church. When we arrived in this world, all the Scrabble pieces were faced up. And they're spelling out a distinct message to us. So what is that message? I believe that God created this world. I believe that God created you. But that brings us full circle back to that original question, why? Why did God create all of this? Well, have you ever read those stories in Genesis very closely, the first couple of chapters specifically? Now, don't worry, I'm not going to read Genesis 1 and 2 to you. The reality is, many of us know parts of those stories by heart. These are stories that we read a lot when we're little children. And then for some reason, we quit reading them. We think of them as children's stories, but there is deep theology in Genesis 1 and 2 because we get a picture of the world as God intended for it to be before everything got messed up. Genesis 1 and 2, I know many of us know part of this story by heart. God created the world, and God made the light, and then this refrain, and it was good. And then you move through the story, God made the earth and the seas, and it was good. God made the plants and the trees, and it was good. God made the sun and the moon, and it was good. God made plants and animals and human beings, and it was all good. And God was very pleased with all of these pieces of creation. But here's a bit of Bible trivia for you. Do you recall the thing in the world that was first declared not good? It doesn't take very long, does it? So Genesis 1, everything is really good. Genesis 2, things are still good. God puts man in the garden, everything is good. But if you fast forward there to Genesis chapter 2, verse 18, there's this text. Then God said, "It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper as his partner." The very first thing in all of creation that was declared not good was man's aloneness. And there's a reason for that, church. We were created to be relational beings. That's in our nature. Genesis 1:27, just before the text I just read, says, "So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them." And what that means is we were made in the image of a communal, relational God. And we know this about God, that God is one, but God is also Father, Son, and Spirit, one God in community with itself. We were created in that image. So we were created to be just as relational as that. Communal people, relational people. We were not made to be alone. We were made to be in community with each other. That's how God designed us. But there's more to God's image than just community. in one of John's pastoral letters, he says a very interesting thing about God. Listen to these words. Beloved, let us love one another, because love is from God. Everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, for God is love. God's love was revealed among us in this way. God sent His only Son into the world so that we might live through Him. In this is love. Not that we have loved God, but that He loved us. And He sent His Son to be the atoning sacrifice for our sins. Beloved, since God loved us so much, we also ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God. But if we love one another, God lives in us. And His love is perfected in us. I believe this one small text, this one paragraph in Scripture, answers that question, why are we here? Perhaps better than any other response the world has ever given. We are here, church, simply stated, we are here because God is love. God created this world because God is love. And what that means is love, in its very essence, it reproduces itself. It reciprocates itself. Love breeds love. And let me show you how this works. When your children love you, and you feel that love from your children in a very literal way, do you not, when you feel that love, do you not feel the desire to love in return? When you experience love given to you from your children, do you not feel the desire to love and to express that love to other people? Folks in this room that are married, when you come home in the afternoon and you kiss your spouse, in that moment, do you not feel that energy and that love that comes, that gives you energy to go out and love the world and to help the world? There's something about love that breeds love. So because God's very nature is love, God created this world as an outpouring, as an expression of that love. Love breeds love. So here it is. Here is our mission. Here is why we exist. And I'll allow the words of John to answer that question for us. Beloved, since God loved us so much, we also ought to love one another. No one has seen God. But if we love one another, God lives in us, and His love is perfected in us. Church, this month we're focusing our attention on the story of God. What has God been up to since the very beginning? And I think what we decided so far is that none of these things that exist are here by chance. They're here for a purpose. There is purpose in God's story. So what is the purpose? We are here, church, to be image bearers of God. That's what we do. That's why we're here. The reason we live is to reflect God's love to the rest of the world. And in case you haven't noticed, our world, especially right now, is in desperate need of God's love. And that's why we exist. Now, here's an interesting thing about love that we need to really understand. Probably everybody in this room have experienced the love of God in a very profound and personal way. And we've experienced that in a wide variety of ways. There are probably people in this room that at some point in your life you experience the love of God through this church. There's probably a moment in your life when the proverbial train went off the tracks. Maybe you experienced a broken relationship in your life. Maybe your marriage was in trouble. Maybe you had one of those moments that so many people experience where your children begin making decisions that you're not proud of and that frustrate you and that scare you. Whatever the case may be, many of us in this room have experienced a moment in our lives when the train went off the tracks. And in those moments, it's likely that your brothers and your sisters surrounded you and they loved you. And they walked with you, and they held your hand, and they moved you through that moment. And you may be experiencing one of those moments right now. All that to say, you've experienced the love of God through the vehicle of this church. And there may have been a moment in time where you've arrived in a room, maybe this room or a room like this, on a Sunday morning, and you can't explain it, you don't know how it works. But you felt God's Spirit come over you in a special way. Have you ever had one of those moments where you're sitting in worship and we're singing together and the congregation is singing all at full voice, and for some reason you just feel especially close to God at that moment and you feel the goosebumps on your arms? Have you ever experienced that? The Spirit of God pouring over you and giving you the love of God in a very special, tangible way. Many of us have experienced the love of God that way. Others of us maybe experienced the love of God through this church, through one of its ministries. Maybe through the children's ministry, or the student ministry, or the worship ministry. Maybe you've seen how one of these ministries literally took you or one of your family members, your child, your spouse by the hand and brought them close to God, or brought them back to God when they had been away. We experience the love of God in profound ways through the vehicle of the church. Many of us have experienced it in a very real way, but here's the thing, church. Here's the danger in this. We must not be content to simply sit back and soak up all of God's love for ourselves. That's not how God's love works. In fact, we are called to share God's love with the rest of the world because we believe that in its very essence, God's love was meant to reach. I love that description of God's love, reach. God's love is ever reaching. It always has been. From the very beginning of time, God's love has been reaching. At creation, God's love reached down and formed us. We are the product of God's love. But even after the fall, even after sin came into the world, God did not give up on us, and God's love didn't quit. In that moment, God began to put a plan into motion that would redeem the world and bring the world back to the safety and the beauty of God's love. And we see that plan working out very slowly through the pages of Scripture. If you notice this, notice that God's love, as part of His plan, initially reached out to a single individual named Abraham. And then a little bit further into the story, we see God's love reaching out a little bit further, and then it develops an entire nation, the nation of Israel. And then finally, God's love through Jesus Christ reaches out and envelops the entire world. That's the story of God's ever-reaching love. That's how God's love works. In fact, over the next few weeks, we're going to be looking at each part of that story. God's love reaching to Abraham, and God's love reaching to Israel, and God's love reaching to the world, because that's the heart of God's story, church. It's an ever-reaching love. God's love reaches. And you could also say it this way. God's love is like a light that shines further and further and further into a dark world. Along those lines, I love the way Paul writes in 2 Corinthians. He says, God said that light should shine out of darkness. He is the same one who shone in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of God's glory in the face of Jesus Christ. This is the ministry. This is the mission that has been given to us. In essence, we are to take the torches that have been handed to us at some point in our life. We're to take that love and we're to move further and further and further into a dark world, lighting the world further and further as we go, bringing God's light with us, bringing God's love with us. I know I told you this a few weeks ago when I was with you, but I've heard stories about this church for a long time. And the stories I've heard are good stories. I know Dan Bichelle very well. He and I had a time together. In fact, a couple of weeks ago in Birmingham, we were at the airport and got to sit down and had a long talk together. Alan has long been one of my good friends as well. And they've always spoken very highly of you. And one of the things I've learned from them is that this is a church that loves each other. Now listen, don't take that for granted. I've known some congregations that don't love each other. I really have. I've met some congregations that don't even really like each other. You love each other. You really do. And your love for each other is kind of known throughout this region. You love to be together. You genuinely care about each other. You love to be together even beyond the Sunday morning worship time. All of those things are tremendous. They're wonderful. They are a blessing. But with that blessing comes a real challenge, and I want you to hear this. This is important. It is sometimes the case that a congregation that loves each other the way that Central loves each other, sometimes we spend less time reaching out. Can I share a great concern I have with you and a passion that I have? It concerns me, if I'm honest, sometimes it scares me that the church in America is not growing. I don't mean simply the church in Amarillo. I mean the church in America is not growing. In fact, it hasn't grown in some time. It's been a long time since the church in America has grown. And the so-called growth that some specific congregations experience is really, if we're honest about it, it's just one Christian or one Christian family moving from this congregation to that congregation. Very few non-Christians in America are finding their way to a community of faith. It's just not happening very much, and it hasn't happened in quite some time. And we could talk all afternoon about why that's the case. Some people are turned off by scandals in the church. There are others that are bothered by the institutional nature of church in America. There are some people that are simply turned off by the hypocrisy of Christians, and there's probably some truth in all of those things. But I would argue this morning that there is still a deeper, more fundamental reason for the church's stagnation in America. And I'll just say it. Christians today are less concerned about people outside of these walls than we used to be. We just are. Not only are we not growing, it really doesn't bother us that much. We're content to bask in the glow of God's love. And to receive all of God's love for ourselves through the ministries of this church, through our worship, through the programs, through brothers and sisters in Christ. And if we're honest with ourselves, so many of us are unconcerned that there are many, many, many others outside these walls that need God's love every bit as much as we do. Church, I have a challenge for you. I want you to make a concerted effort, intentionally, to reach out with God's love. I want you to get serious about forming relationships with non-Christian people. Now listen, there have been multiple studies done on this, and they all say the same thing. The longer someone is a Christian, the fewer friendships they have with non-Christian people. And by the time someone has been a Christian for 5 or 10 years, They have virtually no close relationships with non-Christian people. And you say, but I've been in the church my entire life. Well, that makes it even more difficult, doesn't it? Very few of us have real, deep relationships with non-Christian people. But I want you to make an effort. I want you to find people in your orbit that are non-Christians, and I want you to invite them to this room. I want you to bring them to this family. I want you to introduce them to your brothers and sisters. I want you to allow them the opportunity to encounter God's love in the context of worship. I want you to get them involved in one of the Bible studies that you have at this church. Whenever we start having potlucks again, which will be a great day, whenever you start having potlucks again, I want to encourage you to invite one of these folks to a potluck. Now, there's a place where we experience God's love. I want you to show them God's love together. I want you to invite them into God's story. And church, listen, this is important. When they arrive, you have to receive them well. You have to receive them well. And that means that we have to reorient our vision away from our own comfort to others. And that's a challenge. Especially for those of us that have been coming to rooms like this for a very long time. It's a challenge. So we must be on the lookout for guests. We must welcome them. Invite them to sit with you. Invite them to lunch with you. Invite them to your home. And in doing all of these small things, what we're really doing is we are extending the love of God to them that at one point was extended to us. So that's the challenge. And I'll give you a timeline, and I want to be very specific. Over the course of this calendar year, 1 year from today, okay, October the 3rd, 2022, by that time, I want you to reflect back on what I'm saying right here. Over the course of this year, I want you to commit yourself to sharing God's love with at least one person intentionally. And you say, but I express God's love and to a number of people every single day, all the people that I'm around. Well, that may be true, but I want you to think about a person in your world who does not know God or who has rejected God. And I want you to be intentional with that person. And as we think about mission, sometimes we think of mission as only occurring in places far, far away. You know, Brazil or Ukraine or Colombia, places all around the world. Or maybe we talk about local missions and we think, well, mission is just something that happens in those downtown places, and those parachurch organizations that hand out food and clothing. Mission is much broader than that, church. You are part of God's mission. God's mission happens through your life. And this is part of it. So I'm challenging you to find somebody in your world who does not know God, and I want you to be specific and intentional. I want you to pray for that person on a daily basis. Maybe you want to put their name up on your mirror in your bathroom every morning so you remember to pray for that person every single day. I want you to commit yourself to finding ways to introduce or perhaps reintroduce that individual to God. And I want you to commit to helping that person find a faith community in which he or she can grow. That's my challenge for you. Adults, teenagers, children, you got 1 year. You got 1 year. Be intentional. What is God's story all about? Why are we here? We are here to extend the reach of God's love. That's why the church exists. Period. Everything else is just dressing. I so look forward It's the rest of this month, getting to hear the stories of this church, to see the way that God's love is impacting this world and this nation, this community, through the lives and the stories of the people at Central. Let's pray together. Father, thank you so much for these people that have gathered here this morning. We have gathered to worship you, to learn more about you, to renew relationships with each other in this room. God, and we thank you for the ways that these relationships and this church sustains us and gives us life and gives us energy and hope. God, I pray this morning, even as we begin this time of intentional reflection upon mission, God, I hope that you would remind us how powerful your love is and how it needs to be shared. So God, I pray very specifically, very boldly, that every single person in this room this morning, that you will place in their lives someone that desperately needs to hear your story. God, if they're not there now, I pray that they are there even as early as tomorrow morning. I pray that you place people in our path, people that we can share your love with, people that we can invite into your story. And God, then I pray for the courage that you would help us to build relationship with those people in your name. That we would bring them to this place so they can grow more and more and more into the image in which they were originally created in your name. God, we thank you for answering this prayer even as we pray it together. It's in the name of your Son, Jesus the Christ, that we pray. Amen.
Give